And the inspiration for the concept for this event came to me about 3.5 years ago when I was talking to Adam Goods about what Australia Day meant to us. And through these conversations, we found that there was a big gap between what Australia Day meant to him and his Indigenous people and what Australia Day meant to me. So after years of conversation, we decided that wouldn't it be amazing if we could create a concept that would bring people together to educate people of our history, create a conversation about Australia Day and celebrate as one together through music, performance, dance and sports. So we created the concept WeAreOne, and this is our story.
January 26th is the only date we have to honour our great country. And what an amazing opportunity it gives us all to reflect on our history and some of the important dates of days gone by. The history of the Boonwurrung people dates back many thousands of years, to a time when this land that is now called Melbourne extended right out to the ocean. Port Phillip Bay was then a large flat plain. The first fleet arrived in Botany Bay somewhere between January 18th to the 20th, 1788. The oldest practiced ceremony in the history of our land is the smoking ceremony, created by the original owners more than 60,000 years ago. On the 26th of January in Sydney Cove, Sir Arthur Phillip, his marines and officers claimed the land that they stood on in the name of King George III. Since 1818, the 26th of January was acknowledged as an official public holiday in New South Wales and called Australia Day. After many years of protest, Australian women were given the right to vote across the nation on the 18th of November 1908. On the 26th of January in 1935, Australia Day was recognised as a national public holiday, including all states and territories. 3 years later, on the same day, Aboriginal leaders met in Sydney in a day of mourning to protest at their mistreatment by the white Australians and seek their full citizens' rights. In 1949, following the election of a coalition of the Liberal and Country parties, the Immigration Minister, Harold Holt, allowed 800 non-European refugees to remain in Australia and Japanese war brides to enter Australia. This was the beginning of the abolishment of the White Australia policy. Harold Holt's amendments to the Migration Act 1966 established legal equality between British, European and non-European migrants to Australia. These changes to immigration policy were some of the most significant steps towards the formation of a multicultural Australia. On the 10th of August 1967, the Constitution was changed, giving formal effect to the referendum result, removing from the Australian Constitution 2 references which discriminated against Aboriginal people, thus formally giving them the right to vote. The dismantling of the White Australia policy started in 1949. Its gradual removal over the next quarter century was largely a foreign policy imperative, as European colonialism collapsed in the region and Australia found itself surrounded by newly independent Asian nations. In 1973, the new Whitlam government took the final steps to remove race as a factor in Australia's immigration provisions. On January 26, 2018, a small group of Australians came together as one to create a movement like no other.
So what Australia Day means to me. So a lot of influence would have come from my family, from my dad. And the marches that we go on, the Invasion Day marches and the Invasion Day celebrations, because, well, initially it's it's Invasion Day. It's the day that people came to our country and defaced our land. More politically correct everybody seems to be. It is more about just celebrating being Australian. So not so much about the First Fleet and all that. As far as the date getting changed and things, I didn't understand it at first, why. But the more I talk to people and the more Indigenous people I talk to, they sit there and say they just want a day where we can all celebrate being Australian. Because this is not a day we all celebrate being Australian. This is a day that half of the Australians celebrate, or the majority, but then the Indigenous, we don't celebrate this day. We don't celebrate the day we get embedded. That's not a celebration for us. Sure. It's more of a defeat. Sure. And it's more of a shameful day. So that's why I do think it's important that we change the date, just because, as you said, this is a diverse culture and a diverse society, but we want everyone to connect, and everybody's equal. I'm just saying that I want to be equal. I want to be an equal Australian to everyone, and I want to celebrate with everyone that we're Australian. Because I love this country. I love what it's become. I love Melbourne. I love that it's the most livable city in the world, and I love that I'm the traditional owner of Melbourne. And then I get to share my culture with everybody, and I love the enthusiasm.
Australia Day has kind of changed for me over time because I guess it used to just be, it was a public holiday and it was kind of a bit meaningless. It was just a chance to have a day off, and what's happened is it's changed. There's been so much debate about Australia Day and whether it should be this particular date and is it all encompassing for everyone. And I find what it means to me now, it feels incomplete to me. Australia Day feels like it should be about celebrating being Australian no matter what your background is. So that's, you know, whether you can trace your lineage back to the First Fleet, whether you were here 60,000 years before that, whether you've just come from a country recently. But it's got to be about celebrating a culture that is kind of evolving and changing.
My dad's family put it this way: 7 brothers, mum and dad, 9 of them living in a 2-bedroom house, you know, in St Kilda. And they all just hustled to have to make something for their families, you know. I think the best thing for me is growing up in the western suburbs. My best friends were Australian, Italian, Greek, Indian. That's what I love, the multiculturalism. You can't beat that. That's what I think of Australia. You know? It embraces everyone.
So it's about journey, and I think it's also Australia Day is about learning to exist together.
And today was beautiful just to see, you know, that ceremony, and to, you know, that's so important for me on Australia Day, to feel that connection to the elders as well and to the land.
Yeah.
So it's been beautiful. It's not about, you know, just running amok anymore. I can't even go to those events anymore on Australia Day. It has to be a really spiritual, beautiful time.
Yeah.
Look, I came from Cape Town, South Africa with my family as immigrants because we wanted to start a new life, you know, enter a new chapter where we could come to a country that is stable and safe, and really try and grow a successful life here, you know, whatever that may be. For me, it's, you know, being welcomed into this country and this nation as one. And, you know, for me, I'm truly grateful to be able to stand on this soil and do my job and love what I do, and be accepted in today's society as well. So yeah, for me, it's a truly it's a happy day, a joyful day.
Australia Day to me actually changes all the time, because it's something I do reflect on quite regularly, and in particular more recently. It was only this morning I was talking to my kids, and I told them that they are 8th generation Australian. I'm 7th generation Australian, and what that means. So you don't find very many people that have so many generations as probably my family has.
Australia Day to me my mindset's obviously changed from when I was younger, when it was a slab of piss and a barbie. But when you grow older, you take into consideration everything else. To me, I think it means all Australians enjoying the country that we live in.
I guess from my perspective, I grew up with a bit of white privilege. I'm not ashamed to admit that. It doesn't matter what day it's on. At the end of the day, it's about celebrating what we have now and looking to the future. It's we definitely need to be mindful of where we came from and how lucky we are that we are here. But we do live on stolen land. It's true. But we need to be thankful for that. We need to pay respects to the original peoples of this land and bring everyone into the conversation about the day that we celebrate, our great country.
First of all, we have a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait artists in our crew, and we've been travelling Australia for the past 12 years. So culturally, it's very painful for me. So it's about education for us. When we do our shows, when we actually have our fellas play yiraki or didgeridoo, as most people know it, do their cultural dance, is actually educating people that we do have the longest living culture in the world, and maybe today is a day to actually acknowledge that and recognise that. And then when you talk about that culture, we actually have to go back and understand from 60,000 years right up until today and what happened in between, the good things and the traumatic things. Let's think about modern Australia, but really let's think about the cultural side of it, the cultural aspect, and how incredible it is, and that we should all take that much. If we took on that much, actually this country would be a better place. It's not a bad place, don't get me wrong. I love Australia. I was born and raised here, but culturally what I've learned as a non-Indigenous man, I can't believe that we're not I literally want to get every single Australian and take them on tour, take them to the remote communities, get them to hear the stories that happen here in Victoria, where I was born and raised. Meeting all the elders from this land here, speaking to them, hearing their stories, it's absolutely phenomenal. There needs to be books, it needs to be in schools. That's what today is for me.
Well, he loves a little woman. Someday he'll make his wife, saving all the overtime for the one love of his life. He ain't worried about tomorrow, 'cause he just made up his mind. Life's too short for burning bridges. take it one day at a time. Oh, 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 he's a working class man. Oh, yeah. Oh, oh, yeah, he's a working class man. Yes, he is. I tell you, he's a working class man. Oh, no, yeah. Oh, man, 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 man.
Australia Day, to me, is a time to reflect on what it means to be Australian. For me, it also is a time to really think about our past and celebrate where we've come from, how far we've come, and what the future holds. So for me, we've got a lot of work to do still.
For sure.
And, I hope that we do that in a peaceful way and that we all can come together and celebrate what it means to live in this beautiful country all together.